Welcome, everyone, to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your hosts, Buddy Sotello and Evan Ginzburg, plus special guest, Kenny Casanova. Yes. I always get my chance to do my wrestling announcer voice, my ring announcing voice when I get to do this. But welcome, Kenny, to our little show, as you call it. Before Evan and myself, we started it at the beginning of the apocalypse, and we're continuing it on. It only took an international disaster of mythic proportions for East Coast and West Coast to put together their own wrestling podcast.
Nothing like a pandemic to bring people together.
But it is one of the things that we've said we were always going to get to do. It's, for me, been one of those things where I've said to myself, gee, I really should do a show sometime where I've talked to a lot of the people that I think are wrestling minds, people who have really interesting perspectives on wrestling. And obviously the first person I wanted to bring in was Evan, but you're among one of our earliest guests because I think you are a really great mover and shaker in the independent wrestling industry, and just sort of like you're at this level where, you know, you're not Vince McMahon, because obviously Vince McMahon wouldn't want to touch us with a barbed wire 10-foot pole that was on fire. But, you know, overall, I really think that I'd love to see people like yourself who've been involved in indie wrestling and on the lower levels, but bringing people up, helping people get organized, and also working with stars like you have and getting them to write books and to tell their stories has been a really impressive thing for me. So maybe you can tell the listeners a little bit about what you have done, and we can talk a little bit about the stories that you have involved.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Kenny Casanova. I was mostly a manager in the Northeast independent scene. I started around 92, 93, 94 in that area. I met Evan Ginzburg at a show for the first time. Let me think. I want to say 98, 99. Yeah. I think it was. Do you remember which one it was that I met you at?
No, it's all a blur. You know, thousands of shows, but yeah,
it was a guy named Mike Rush ran a show in the Boston area, and he brought all these names in. He brought in like Johnny Smith. He had Nails there. He had Edge and Christian before they were called that. They were called Sexton Hardcastle and Christian Cage. Johnny Bradford was their manager. He had Dan Severn. He had tons of talent, but he had probably two people come to the show. You know, there was really no one in the seats. But Evan was selling stuff in the. He was selling some of his newsletters and some various merchandise. Who's the guy next? There was a guy right next to you. I think he might have passed. Was his name Andy Vargo?
Yeah, Big Andy. Yeah. He was right like a legendary vendor.
You remember him? Yeah. He was right next to you, and I was looking at. He was selling a thing of Hulk Hogan vitamins. And you came over and you started talking to me, and we laughed about it. And
hopefully not steroids. Hopefully not steroids.
Yeah, injectable vitamins. So I used to do managing type stuff quite a bit. My gimmick was I was like a karaoke type singer. I'd walk the wrestler to the ring and I would sing bad karaoke songs and make people boo. I would sing Britney Spears. I would sing Tom Jones.
Nice.
Eventually what happened though was people said, hey, Kenny, can you do our party? Can you come do karaoke at our party? And I wasn't a DJ for karaoke, so I kind of learned it. And I started doing some parties, and they paid way more than the independent manager scene. So then I had to kind of like figure out, do I want to make $400 or $500 a night, or do I want to make a hot dog and a handshake for, you know, for my work at a wrestling show? And then the karaoke thing turned into, do you want to do our wedding? And then that more than doubled it. So I was making like $1,200, and it was taking me out of the game, and I didn't like money taking me out of the game. So that's when I started to offer services to write. Around that time, Kamala lost both legs, unfortunately, to diabetes. And I said, hey, man, let's put a book together for you. We did it up on Kickstarter. And when when we tried to figure out how to sell the book and distributor means and at Barnes and Noble and Walmart and all that, we learned that the world is more flat now, meaning I can compete with a big company like Barnes and Noble's with certain audiences and just anyone in general. There was a guy named Robert Friedman who wrote a book called The World is Flat. He wasn't a flat earther, but he came up with that idea that we can compete because of the internet now with big companies. So a guy in his basement can sell the same product as Walmart.com.
We're right now doing the same kind of podcast right now that NBC News and CNN and all of that, they're all doing it from their homes also. So we're using basically the same technology or close to it, because the stuff they have at home isn't any better than the stuff that they have, than we have.
We're doing what Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon are doing, but they have nicer homes than us.
Right.
And way more talent.
Right.
Yes.
And way more talent than us, I'd like to add in there. But no, I mean, so it's very impressive. Wait, I actually gave you one of the photographs, I think, that you used in your book.
Okay, cool.
With Kamala at the 2007. Which
one was it?
It was the one where Kamala is fighting with Slick.
Okay.
Where he's like grabbing Slick through the ropes.
Nice. All right.
Because and it was he was teamed up with a one-man gang against the powers of pain.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Cool.
And it was kind of like, I think around one of the last times that Kamala was able to like do any kind of work, any kind of show. 2007.
Was that was that the one where like the promoter skipped town or something, didn't pay people?
Oh yes.
Okay. I remember which one you're talking about.
Russell Fan Fest. It was legendary for what an incredible disaster it was. Right. And after you're done talking about a little bit more about your book stuff, I definitely want to talk about that. That was one thing. Well, there hasn't been one since then of that kind of magnitude, because it failed on such a fire festival type scale. It's kind of like the fire festival, but for wrestling in the Bay Area.
Kenny, why is it important to tell stories such as Kamala's? I mean, I know what's involved in writing books. It's quite an undertaking.
Yeah, it's tough, man. And like you said, with the promoting of a convention or what have you, it's kind of thankless. But it is nice for when the fans, do come back and say, hey, that was great. And then they want to buy your next one that you worked and helped on. So that does feel good. I don't do it much for the money, but I did want money to happen for Kamala. I wanted him to make some money. And two, I want to preserve the stories, because once the wrestlers pass, the stories go with them, and they're gone forever. So getting them down into paper form, the books last longer than all of us. They're history now. So, I called around, I checked with publishers like Triumph and different places, and it seemed like, in the most part, the wrestler would get some kind of advance, maybe like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, and then just a tiny bit off of each book. And I'm like, geez, this isn't going to help him as much as I wanted it to happen, So I tried to learn publishing. So I started reading up everything I could about that. I actually contacted Evan, and he hooked me up with a guy that knew a little bit about publishing. And we looked around, and the best I could find was to do it ourselves. And I'll say this too about like independent publishers. There are probably some good ones out there that have a lot to offer and all. But at the same time, making the world flat and doing it yourself and learning how to publish the book, print the book, and then distribute the book, you're basically doing the same thing that a company that has overhead and has employees that they need to pay. So you can make a heck of a lot more money. And when I said, James, if we mail the books out ourselves, they may not be in Walmart, but you're going to make $20 off of a book instead of 75 cents. So that's what we did. And instead of him maybe making $5-6 grand, he made $60 grand after the project was
done. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
that is wonderful.
And he got it all. I wasn't looking for any money on that. I made a little bit of money off the next books here and there, a couple grand here and there. But that's not really what I'm looking for with these stories. And I think that's what's made a little bit of success with this, because I'm also an English teacher. I was also a teacher like Evan, and I still am. And with the COVID right now, I'm teaching like we're doing right now to kids on a screen. It's very odd, but that's my regular income, and also wedding DJ is my regular income, and this other stuff is almost like a full-time job, and I do it, but I'm not trying to get the idea.
His sound is off.
Yeah, Kenny.
Look good, and I think that's why some of the stuff is doing.
Kenny, your sound is off.
Yeah, for some reason, no, we can't hear you.
Maybe it's these things. I think my phone just turned on. Let me see if this is this. Oh, that's what happened. My headphones, I moved them because my dog was trying to eat one.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's okay.
What did you hear when you lost me?
Well, we were talking about you self-publishing and what it was like for you to decide to take that on, which it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you bake a cake from scratch, it'll cost less than getting it at the at the bakery. If you take the expertise to learn how to bake it.
Right. So I don't know when you lost what I was saying, but I think one of the things that helped my project and most of my projects become a success now is I don't try to think, how can I make money off this? How can I make money off this? I try to really make something good. Sort of like an artist when they're painting, they want the painting to be the best they can, and a lot of them don't think about selling it. And some of them don't want to sell it, kind of thing. So that's a big part of it. And so my goals have always been to really let the wrestlers keep, partial ownership to the book. So if they want to go out and sell a book at a merchandise table, or on the website, merchandise wise, they only have to pay cost on it. They're not paying like a wholesale price. So, for instance, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, a friend of mine, he has a book out through a publisher, and whenever he wants to buy a book to put on his merchandise table and make money off of, he's paying $12 a book off of them. That's a wholesale price, the same as a bookstore. But I just print more books up for $2.75. So you can make an extra $10 off of every book, if you do this kind of little formula that I've done recently.
Plus, it can even be a thing that then fans will bring to a signing opportunity, and they can get even more money, when they pay to get it signed,
Right. Yep.
So it's sort of a way to get, extra money in that sense. No, it's wonderful. I mean, I've been so impressed with what you've done. In fact, can you tell everybody the different books that you have that you've worked with?
Sure. Yeah. We did Kamala's first, then also did Brutus Beefcake. After Brutus Beefcake, also Dangerous Danny Davis, the referee, not the Ohio Valley. His is a little different. His is more like a school book. We tried to do a young adult novel type story with that. So sort of like a Mice and Men size book, a shorter, quicker read. And that's more about work ethic and building your way up a ladder and by doing a good job. And then he started out putting the rings together. Then he became in charge of ring crew. Then he had a backstage job that eventually led to a referee, which led to a wrestler, and then he was in the semi-main event of WrestleMania 3. So it really showed the kids that if you work hard and you stick to doing a good job, work ethic wise, you could make something decent of yourself and try to achieve a dream, like he did. So that was something different than the regular big, thick historical wrestling book, tell-all kind of thing.
Sure.
Next one I did was I started Big Van Vader's book. That one lasted 4 years. That one was crazy because right when we got it finished, that took about 2 years. Then he got the diagnosis that he was going to pass away eventually from congestive heart disorder. So we had to kind of go back and like re-change things because there were a few places he didn't want to just do like total slams on different guys, and he wanted to for lack of better words, go out on a good note, and then we had to, kind of talk about what it was like to live with an expiration date, him knowing he was going to pass and the different things that he wanted to finish before his life was finished. It's a real tough read. At the very end, his son gives you the last handful of pages. We kind of thought about a book called Go Ask Alice, which is a kid's book, I think from the 70s.
I read that.
Where you remember that? Yeah. So what
happened?
Very shocking with that.
The overdose.
Yes. And the last page was just like, oh, by the way, she passed. and you're jarred because everything seems okay, and then bang, they hit you with that. So it was sort of like that in our book. You think everything's good. He's talking about, oh, someday I want to get in the Hall of Fame, and then the next day, unfortunately, this is what happened. And then the sun fills in the last couple of weeks of his life. So it was a real jarring read. But
you know, it was a surreal experience reading Eddie Guerrero's book because he's getting his life back together. He's beating his addictions. He's conquering his demons. And meanwhile, as you're reading it, he died.
Yeah.
It's after the fact.
And what I want to add, my 2 cents on this was that my good friend, very close friend, Mark Bison Smith, was approached by Vader, and Vader wanted to give him the helmet and the shoulder pads and said to Mark Smith, you could be the new Vader if you wanted to be. He said, my time is coming past, and I passed the gimmick on to someone else. And Mark Smith turned it down and said, no, there's only going to be one Vader, and that's you. And of course, Mark also died in now it's a little bit over 8 years ago in the ring in Puerto Rico. So it's I definitely understand. One of these days, Evan and I will do some kind of memorial show for a lot of these people. We've already talked about some of his friends that have passed too, like Johnny Valiant, and what it's like to what were your feelings on like working with someone so closely and having them pass like that? So
yeah, it was stunning. I mean, he had me come down to Dallas toward the end. He had moved away from the Rocky Mountains, which he loved, big open area, real nice scenic, to like a little tiny little bit of nothing play, and he was trying to get a little bit of nothing apartment, trying to get his life in order. He was eating better. He's going to the gym and stuff. He didn't want to. He didn't want to believe the diagnosis, so he was working to fight it and to prove them wrong. But I think 19 months after they said you have 2 years to go, that's when he passed. So they were pretty close. It was a little less than that actually. He even hooked up with DDP. I started texting DDP saying, "Hey man, can you do a little project with Vader and stuff?" DDP's like, "Man, he's real stubborn. I don't know." He says, "I'll try." He's like, "I'll reach out to him." And they got him for a bit, and he got him kind of, doing more exercise, eating better. So maybe he's lengthened. Maybe he got a couple extra months out of him for his son. I don't know, in his family. I'd like to think that's probably what happened from some of that work. But yeah, it was tough. He had the foresight to actually. We talked to Bill Apter, and Bill Apter said, "You know what you could do?" He said, "Get these little my name is name tags that you wear at a convention, but blank." And he said, "Have them sign a bunch of those, and then you can have autographed books for the fans in the event that if he were to pass." So in Dallas, I had him sign a bunch of those, so we can still have autographed books to him, even though the book came out, like you said, after in Eddie Guerrero's case, after he passed. The same thing postmortem with Vader. You could get an autographed book, So
Kenny, when the wrestlers approach you, how much of your decision, because doing a book is a huge time investment. I know, I've written a book. So when they approach you, do you say, "Hey, I'm a big fan of Kamala, but maybe I'm a lesser fan of this guy"? I mean, what's involved in your decision making, whether you take it or not?
It's tough, and I don't like to say no to anybody. So that's bad, I guess I'm a book whore to some degree, But so what happens is, let me give you an example. So I started doing Just Incredible's book, and at the same time, Sid started contacting me, and he wanted me to go with him. So I'm doing Sid's book at the same time, and I'm also doing Bruce Pritchard's. But what happens is during all of these three different guys' lives, there's usually a period of time where they're not available to do a whole lot. So then I try to shift over to the other project.
Right.
So Bruce Pritchard right now, as you may or may not know, he's like back to WWE, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and he said himself he's all but almost ghosted me. He's not talking to me much at all because he's got all the craziness with how does wrestling work with no audience, on TV and pay-per-views and this and that. So we've kind of put the project to the side, and I'm doing more of Just Incredibles now, who I didn't talk to for a couple of months because he was working on something with Vince Russo with a podcast program, like an after AEW talk show kind of thing. And I'm also doing Sid's book. So at the same time, Ken Patera wanted a book. And how do you say no to Ken Patera? Before that, Bugsy McGraw wanted a book. And how do I say? So what I did was I reached out to a couple other writers and said, hey, I'd like to do this book for this guy, but I can't. Are you available? Then they'll do the book for him, but they're kind of doing my formula. So I'm sort of publishing it, but I'm a bit of an anti-publisher in that I let the guy keep the writing, and the writer might just make a couple grand for writing it, and they help promote it a little and get it out there. So that's kind of what's happening now. If I have more of an indie guy come to me, same type of thing. I'm trying to find different, like Andrew Anderson just contacted me today. He wants to do a book. But I mean, honestly, whether he was Andrew Anderson or he was Hulk Hogan, it's tough for me to write a fourth book. So I said, let me see if I can find somebody to help you do that. So at COVID Con, there's a little plug now, at this big book fair that we're going to do, I'll try to see if somebody's got an open spot for them and see if we can hook them up, and then I'll try to get them to get the book published at some point by just printing it and then getting it over to the wrestler, so they can have maybe half stock and the other guy can sell stuff on his site too, and just kind of share it.
And is there ever a point where you might say, hey, this guy's basically not gone beyond the indies. His story is not that particularly interesting. Yeah, he could probably hustle some books, but maybe it's not as worthwhile as a different project.
Yeah, you're never going to do the Buddy Sotello story, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I haven't had to really say to somebody, I'm not doing your book, you're not known. You know what I mean? If it were to come to that, I would say maybe something like, maybe if you can help me do a lot of it, I'll help you get it published. If you can help me get it written, or I can help you find, somebody that can help that happen. But yeah, you're right. I am kind of getting some big names, and it's exciting for me to work with those guys. So it does make me sound hypocritical in saying I'm not doing it for the money, but I'm kind of working with the guys that I grew up watching on TV, and I'm kind of trying to give back to something I think mainstream wants to see. So it's a little give and take, I guess, there.
I don't think anyone would begrudge the fact that you're doing it for the money, because as Evan said, it's hard work. And, your books have a lot of research that goes into them. You go to some really great lengths, I think. I've had a chance to read your Kamala book, and I think that you go a pretty good level to making sure that you have thoroughly researched your subject. Are there some things that maybe aren't in any of the books that you'd like maybe to share with the audience, and some of the stories of working either with Kamala or with Vader or Hacksaw Jim Duggan, maybe, that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so I didn't write Hacksaws, but I used to help him do some stand-up acts. So we would go around and I promoted him and got him going with some comedy stand-up acts, which were pretty fun. But how about with Vader? This is pretty neat. First time I got to actually write for WWF, if you want to say that, or WWE, I'm showing my age, would be before he passed. Vader got to induct Stan Hansen. So he got a Hall of Fame moment, even though it wasn't his, but it was his chance to be on the stage at the Hall of Fame for WWE. He said, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I kind of drafted him out a bit of a speech, which he used a lot of the bullet points too. But I said, what we should do is we should really do something visual, because those are the moments at the end of the Hall of Fame that people will remember. Is if you do something with a prop or you do something fun. I don't know if you can hear my dog, but she's being super annoying.
Look,
she brought me.
I got my kids running around in the background. That's unfortunately, the quarantine for you.
Yeah.
The distractions abound, but that's all right. It'll make this show priceless. It'll put it in a special time capsule for us.
Right.
But continue on.
Yeah. So, I mean, what is Vader known for with Stan Hansen? There's a trivia question for you. I mean, you guys know, I'm sure, but what would you say?
The lariat?
Ultra stiff matches. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, he got his eye knocked out of his head in All Japan.
Yeah.
Remember that? So, I said, what could we do that might be fun with the eye getting knocked out of your head? Because if you can make fun of a not funny situation, it might be something that stands out.
Right.
So, so he's like, geez, I don't know. He's like, I have no idea. So I said, how about this? You remember those slinky glasses where the eye just kind of goes?
Yeah.
I said, let's get one of those and take the other one out. So it's just got one. So you're wearing it, and then the eye falls out of your head. And he started laughing. I mean, this is funny because he's a real tough bastard, and like you don't usually picture comedy from a Vader. So he's like, oh yeah, we got to do this. He's like, what do we do with it? And I said, well, how about this? You put the glasses in your pocket, and you're about to read something about Stan Hansen. You're like, hold on, let me get my glasses. And then you put them on, and then the eye comes out. And he's like, oh, that's great. That's great. So we only had a week left, and I'm looking on eBay, and I find a great red pair that's from 1957, something from like, you would get in the old comic books that would say X-ray vision glasses or whatever. Because I couldn't even find that simplistic of a toy out anymore. I run the kids with all the little gadget games now, in their cell phones.
Or some kid swallowed one. Some kid swallowed one and they got rid of him. One of those things.
So I order it quick. It gets sent to him. He gets it last second. He sits and him and his son worked on getting the other eye off, so it still looked good. Had a nice red pair, and then he pulled it off. So if you were to go back and watch the Stan Hansen induction, him putting the glasses on with the eye falling on the head is my comedy influence to Big Van Vader.
Wow, nice. That's really nice.
Hey, I'll tell you a quick Kamala story. I'm sitting with Kamala at an indie show, and he's telling me he wrestled Hulk Hogan in a sold-out arena, 15,000 people. Wow. And he was paid the Herculean sum of $800.
Nice.
15,000 sold out. Yeah. So whenever the fans do these guys made millions of dollars and they pissed it away on wine, women, and song, I tell stories like that where these guys were exploited. How much money?
I mean, you probably wind up talking with a lot. I mean, Kamala needed your help to make it through when Vince McMahon wouldn't lift a finger to help. And we've seen recently how much Vince is willing to help the people that have made him billions of dollars.
Right. And Kamala wasn't one of these guys to take drugs and, abuse himself that you can look back and go, well, he made bad decisions. He really wasn't. He was pretty clean cut and all. He does tell a story in the book, you may recall, right around that Hulk Hogan era time, where I think he was going to the show and he was driving with Whippleman and Harvey Whippleman and Brooklyn Brawler and Curtis Iakea. You remember him? Sullivan, my son. Yeah. King Curtis. He was riding with him, and Curtis Iakea used to smoke the doobie. He would say, "Smoke the doobie," and he put something in it, and he pretty much pushed it on Kamala, peer pressure, and Kamala got to that show and was messed up. And they said that they pretty much painted a couple of lines Tatanka on his face, they didn't do his face. They pushed him out there, and Hogan was like, "What's going on?" when he went to wrestle him, and he couldn't wrestle him. Kamala was a mess, and he pretty much just gave him the leg drop, and that was the end of the match. And he couldn't remember any of it, and he was ticked off at King Curtis after that. But they found it to be a funny rib that they pushed something on a guy that doesn't really do that type of thing. So But,
unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff on the road that's a lot worse than a twisted joint, and especially when I broke my shoulder recently. By the way, no sling.
There you go.
That just was this week. I got past. Yeah, who's your dog, by the way?
This is Gizmo. She looks sort of like a gremlin.
Yeah,
your kid looks just like you.
Yeah. How old is Gizmo?
8. She's a Chinese crested too. They don't have hair on their backs, really. I don't know if you can see that.
Hey, hi.
Well, it's perfect for the summertime. So here's a question that I have for you, Kenny. Is if you could interview any wrestling personality, living or dead, who would you want to interview?
Jeez, you mean for a book or just to talk to?
Well, yeah, for a book. If you could magically, the work would be done for you, but you would get to a book in the style that you love. Yeah,
My
there
wife
you go.
wanted to see your dog. Yeah. There you go.
So who would make a good book, I guess, is what you're saying. I think would be good is Scott Steiner. I think he'd be good. because, you know, he has his time with Rick Steiner, and he also has his solo career, and he had a lot of life threatening injuries, you know, in the ring, where I think he like almost filleted his arm once, and he also had some kind of heart issue right in the ring and stuff. So, and he also recently, I think, opened I don't know, a burger joint or something like that, or Roy Rogers or some kind of restaurant or something. So I think he's got some neat stories, and, you know, he was known for being pretty stiff and also ribbing. So he'd be one choice, I think. If you wanted to go old school, probably Ken Patera, which I haven't been able to do, but I've got a guy interviewing him now. I think Ken Patera would be a great story. And my buddy Simon Gregory, who does a podcast, I said, dude, go and interview this guy and get everything you can, you know, because we never know, like, you know, how many days we have left. You know, we're working with Vader. I didn't expect that when I first started working with him. So he's been interviewing Ken Patera for the better part of a year, and he's got all of this stuff, all these notes, but it's not a book yet. But eventually, I'm going to work with the other guy, and then we'll put his name on the book too. You know, it'll say Simon Gregory's first book along with me and Ken Patera. So I think both of those, that one that we're working on now, as well as maybe Scott Steiner, I think would be pretty cool.
What if you could go back through all history?
Old
even
school?
Someone that was gone. Yeah, someone that was gone that you can't interview now, but you could interview.
Bobo Brazil or Haystacks Calhoun, I think. And I bought haystackscalhoun.com because I want to do something someday. I haven't yet. I have it. If anybody ever needs it and has something more important than me going on, you could always contact me. You know, I'll hook you up. But I do that every once in a while. Like, I'll pick up different domains so that if a project comes about, we've got it. Because there are these squatters that get domains and then they want $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for it. And it's ridiculous. So right now I own DonMorocco.com. I own themagnificentmorocco.com, which I also want to do a book with him. And I talk to him a lot and he just doesn't want to do it yet. But I own PaulOrndorff.com. I own CaptainLouAlbano.com. You know, people that I liked and that I would like to do. I own Brazil.com, HaystacksCalhoun.com, stuff like that. I haven't done anything with them. I'm just holding them because when I went to do Tito Santana's book, we wanted him to have a website so he could sell stuff. That's part of what I do is, okay, we got to drive the traffic somewhere when I put the book out. So I make websites for the guys so they have an autographable outlet, you know, for their book that they can sell for themselves. So like Tito and Brutus Beefcake, I got BrutusBeefcake.com I sniped it, lack of a better term, for like $75 when people were trying to, you know, get $5,000 off of him. I waited till the last day, grabbed it like you would on eBay, got it for like $75 from who was hoarding it. Same thing for Tito Santana, got his for $250, you know, and now they have websites. So if you go there, they can sell their 8x10s in their books, sign that stuff and make extra money for them as well. So that's part of what I do. I'm not a horrible web designer. I have a book website of my own, and I probably have 8 or 9 websites up. So.
Okay.
Kenny, as an English teacher and a publisher, what's most important when you decide to do a book? I mean, I can't imagine some of these guys are tremendous writers, but I'm sure they have tremendous stories to tell. And what's the priorities as far as doing this?
Priorities as far as content?
Yeah, as far as the content itself. Yeah.
So what I do when I start to put it together is I listen to the different shoot interviews and I listen for where stories aren't told. So I'm asking the questions that haven't been told before. And I try to put a bunch of those down. And typically those stories are the things that happened before they got in the ring. So I spend a long time getting the stuff before they even start training. And that's what I'm doing with Sid right now. Like, he's telling me hunting stories. He's telling me stories in Arkansas and Memphis when he's growing up, bouncing around from house to house, telling me stories about his father playing tough love with him, pitching baseball, hitting him in the face over and over again to toughen him up. Like, really crazy stories.
That's a sadistic love.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than tough love. You're right. But that's the kind of thing.
I can't even take away my kids' iPads without having them break into, you know.
Bob Roop blogs online, and he's a tremendous writer, which is very unusual for a wrestler. The man can write. So to me, that's a gem. When you find somebody who not only has great stories and a great career and some kind of name value, but is also a great writer. That's very unusual.
But he was the sugar hold guy, right? Bob Roop. He did a sugar hold, I think was his move, like some kind of submission move.
He was part of Sullivan's Army in Florida, and he went before that also. He was a tremendous technician, but he had a stellar career, and he wrestled all over the world. But this
I was going to say, I wrote a story with him in it, and I can't remember, something about a sugar hold or something, I think it was called.
I don't know, but I'm saying he's that rare wrestler who's actually a super writer, which to me would be gold. Yeah.
And he has no book, huh?
Not that I'm aware of, unless he's doing it on his own.
Yeah.
Well, who knows? Maybe somewhere out there people will be listening to this podcast and hook everybody up, and that'd be really great. But so let's talk about your upcoming wrestling show that you're doing, and it's a book fair or what?
COVID-Con.
Yeah. So I've never I've promoted wrestling shows. I've done the wrestling. I've done wrestling managing. I've done ring announcing. I've never, and I've done all the book stuff, but I've never done a convention type thing. And 2 weeks ago, and that's why this isn't all that much old yet, another author wrote to me. His name's John Cosper. He writes a lot of books too. He did. He's working on Tracy Smothers' book right now. He also did a guy named Madman Pondo's book and David Schultz. He did David Schultz's book. So he sends me a picture. And, with all the Zoom and all the stuff that's going on with the coronavirus for teaching and different meetings and working at home, there's something like a Harvard type college said, we're going to get a bunch of authors together and have them talk. He's like, you think we could do this? Like, just get a bunch of authors and do like a Zoom kind of thing and open it to the public. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what if we did this? And we just started kind of riffing on it. And I put a couple of things that I've seen together and said, how about this? We use Facebook Live as a platform, and then that brings people in instantly. And every 30 minutes, we have a different person, and then they can Q&A off of the Facebook Live stream. Because what happens is, for people that aren't familiar, you look at your phone, you get a little video, and underneath it, person asks a question, and under that, another person asks a question, and then another person. And John didn't really know how to go about doing it. He just liked the idea of some kind of Q&A. So I started putting together all the technical aspect of it. So it's sort of like a Royal Rumble. So every 30 minutes, a new guy's going to show up on the Facebook page.
Nice.
And what I really wanted, though, and John likes the idea too, is that what happens when DDP is leaving, but Dutch Mantel is showing up? Can we make them interlap? So rather than to go with the regular Facebook feed, we're going to make a link happen that all the guys go into. And then as DDP is about to go, the other guy comes in, and now we're a fly on the wall, and we can see the two guys talk to each other. Maybe they haven't talked in a long time.
Wow.
Hopefully it's not them like flicking each other off, but actually some nice, stories or something coming out of it. So
nice. Wow. I've never heard of anything like that. And,
and Bill Apter said there hasn't been, and he's a bit of a historian himself, also known for, the Apter mags and all of this. But he's like, I don't think there's ever been, and I think the reason being is there's never been a need. I mean, when you would interact in the past, hey, I'm going to get an autograph. But since we can't really do that right now, we can have the interaction in this weird world that we're living in, this sci-fi weird situation that's now reality. But have the fans have that interaction and have something cool to do. And people have just jumped right on board. And the last 2 weeks, we got something like 60 names of really popular authors related to wrestling, historians from around the world, and also professional wrestlers.
And I think what's great is, instead of saying, for example, DDP is the most famous, we're going to put him on for 2 hours, and we're going to put this guy on for 10 minutes. Sometimes the lesser known guys are great talkers, and the bigger names aren't as good. I mean, I've interviewed thousands of people over the years between radio and TV. And sometimes you're very disappointed with a big name, and a lesser name just blows you away. So I think it's great. It's like very democratic. Half hour. I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
So the other day we did a little test, and Evan, you jumped in for a minute, right? I think it was you. Yeah, you were in there for a minute. Right after you left, I think Coco Beware was in there. I forget who was in your little bit group, but when you left, Nikita came in, Breznov, and a guy from Austria who's a historian on CWA, like Otto Wanz type stuff, catch wrestling.
Right.
And that guy was showing his stuff. He had robes from wrestlers that I'm not all that familiar with. He has over 2,000 books in many languages about wrestling, and it was just crazy. He's a little tough to understand him. He's a little bit of a, he's speaking English, but that's not his first language. But the sheer stuff he was showing, posters and talking about Otto Wanz, and that is great. So to speak to Evan's point, yeah, we're going to have historians from Austria and from Germany and from UK and all around the world too. That may have some neat stuff to share.
Yeah, and I think if it's slightly visual, where you could see the books and the memorabilia instead of just talking heads for the entire day. Yeah, I think it'll be great.
And yeah, go ahead and plug it now. We'll also make sure that it's in all the stuff that we have, cool. And we'll talk about it on our Facebook page that we have for wrestling and everything coast to coast. But you might as well tell people about it now if they're just listening in.
Yeah, so the convention itself is called COVID Con for obvious reasons. We decided to make a grouping of a loose, almost like an NWA banner of authors, and I'm calling that Wrestling Bookmarks. So that way, if this is gone and we want to do something again, if the coronavirus thing is finished and we want to do something like this again, there's some kind of governing body of authors that can have a name. So it's called Wrestling Bookmarks presents COVID Con. And we just got Dutch Mantel called me just before this and confirmed. So we've got more people still coming in. It's going to be May 2nd and 3rd. Perhaps we may even have like a little surprise early stuff on Friday night because we still have other people that we want to get in on it. So, but for the most part, the main day, May 2 and May 3rd, Saturday and Sunday, this coming up, there's something like 50 or 60 names now. And every half an hour, like we said, there'll be another one in there. And one of the neat things is there'll be a couple of pairings. Like there's a guy named Scott Stevens who's doing one of the Glow Girls, Sunny, the California Girls book, and he'll be with her together. There'll be an ECW panel with Just Incredible, Sabu, and Joel Gertner in it. There'll be ODB has a mystery surprise guest from wrestling. We don't know who it is. Stuff like that. So there'll be some neat little surprises like that along the way. Al Snow is not confirmed, but he says he's definitely doing it. I don't know where I'm gonna put him, but he's coming in. He might do a run-in in somebody else's. Yeah. So,
hey, people are in different time zones all around the world. You could put guys on 1, 2, 3 in the morning. It would work.
Yeah, you're right. And the other thought is too. I just came up with this idea an hour before this. I was talking to Dutch Mantel. He's like, "How are you gonna monetize this?" I'm like, "Well, this one's supposed to be free." He's like, "Well, you should try to monetize the next one." And I'm like, "You're right." So I'm going to offer it free to Fight TV if they want it. I don't know if they'll hear this, but I'm trying to find a contact at Fight TV and see if they want to just air it, because I would imagine they have a less amount of content coming in. And if they want to run, they'll have from 8 in the morning to midnight both days for the most part of footage that they can just run if they want it. So if you guys are listening, I think this would be built for you and you have it.
You could take tips on a live broadcast if you if you have a good.
Who I think should make some money is the moderators, because I have a handful of moderators doing it, 2 or 3 guys, where they're going to like you guys are on the screen with me now. There'll be a moderator in the corner, maybe a wrestler or 2 off to the side. Those guys are going to run for 6, 7, 8 hours straight. So people want to tip them, that would be pretty cool. I'll see, maybe I'll put up a link for them so they can make a little bit extra money off for volunteering their time. It's a good idea.
Even if any of the guys have a GoFundMe, you could probably plug that as well.
Yeah, hopefully, they'd be able to plug whatever they wanted.
Yeah, Coco Beware is on, and he's getting a knee replaced, and he has a GoFundMe. So I told him definitely he should plug the GoFundMe. Yeah,
Tracy Smothers also has a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
So while we're talking books, this is one of Kenny's great books. And on the back, you have Kamala painting himself. And we also have Vader Time, very dramatic cover. I hope you could see it here clearly. The back cover
I like the artwork. The artwork
So
for that cover is my favorite.
yeah. So this is not some like cheesy gimmick. These are real books. They look beautiful, professional, and well worth reading and supporting. And create art. I mean, I've done a lot of things in my life. It's not about the money, and if it's not a million seller, it's not a million seller. Ironically, what you guys were saying earlier is many times an author will have a million selling book, but because they only get 10% of, let's say, a $10 paperback is $1. So many times these guys are teaching at a college, they're creative writing, they're a professor of English or whatnot, because the books are not supporting them. So if a Kamala could pocket $60,000 when he's in need, this is a great thing to support. And I actually read it, and it's well worth reading. It's well worth
absolutely. Yeah, no, and it's just right now we are seeing in today's society that Vince McMahon isn't supporting these people, that these guys have nowhere to turn. Even though they helped Vince make a ton of money, they don't I mean, even now, especially with the COVID situation, no wrestlers are getting out there and getting any work. The indie folks aren't getting any work, and the guys that, survive off of coming to shows and getting autographs and that sort of thing. They can't travel anywhere, so this is a great way for them to be able to promote their stuff and to be able to maybe make a few bucks while they're at home and not because of course, being the easiest way to be forgotten is to be out of sight. And if nobody thinks about these guys, then they just sort of disappear into the woodwork.
Plus, it's preserving history. If you write a book, 100 years from now, somebody will read that book. We'll all be gone. The wrestlers will be gone, but the book will still be here. So this is important work. A guy like Kamala entertained millions of people. A guy like Vader entertained millions of people. Vader's gone already. Kamala's not in the best of health. These books will be here in the future. It's important work. WWE will sell every ridiculous gimmick. You could toss it in the trash in 6 months. In 100 years, you could read Kenny Casanova's books. And I mean,
don't buy those side plates for your WWE Championship belt. I didn't even know this, but like those plates that go on the side now, custom ones of those, that's a thing. And like people are spending $400 or $500 on sets of like custom plate stuff, that they put on the sides of their WWE Championship belt.
Buddy, I know a guy who bought a $6,500 Fiend belt to impress the ladies. I'm joking. But can you imagine? This guy would break into a cold sweat to buy a book for $25 or whatever. He's got a $6,500 Fiend belt. Wow. Okay? Come on.
And then
the book is going to be with you for... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and he probably paid $3,000 to go to last year's WrestleMania too.
I was just going to say with the book though, the book will bring you up maybe like 8, 9, 10 hours of entertainment, whereas the Fiend belt, you look at it and go, "That's cool." That's the extent of the.
It's good for Halloween once a year.
Yeah.
So, Kenny, where do you think we're headed right now? I mean, just your overall opinion about like what's going to happen with the business itself. What's going to happen with, your thoughts on COVID and how it's going to change what we're doing right now? Do you think people will be ready to come back to arenas anytime soon and see big shows like they used to?
I don't think legally we even can at the time, right now. And they say it's going to be tiered out. So like they'll bring little bits of stuff back into, public mainstream here and there, restaurants, and then maybe a bar, and then maybe a wedding, or whatever, as far as gatherings are concerned. But they're going to really have to build up to, meetings of groupings of 10,000 people at a shot, I think. So honestly, I don't want to slam, the product because you want the guys, the boys to get some work when they can. But the no audience thing, I just don't really like it. I sort of like the AEW Like I watched the AEW and they kind of got it right in that they've got some kind of noise going around the ring. They're putting a few people around. But if it's silent, you can't work off of an audience. And I think you can even see it in the performance. Like these guys, I don't want to say they look lost in the ring, but they don't look as excited to be there. So the product's not so great.
I think for better or worse, it's going, and probably worse, it's going to go to more film things like The Undertaker and AJ Styles or the Hardys.
Right.
Because WWE has a film branch to begin with. So they could easily put together more and more films like that where wrestling meets cinema, for better or worse.
Right.
It's not my thing, but some people enjoy it. And at least the wrestlers have work. But, I don't think it's... I think wrestling is meat and potatoes. Good versus evil, in the ring, with a crowd, and everything else is secondary. I'm sorry. It's just not the same.
Now, do you think there'll be just like... Because we've seen indie shows happen before, all of us have, that were, in fire trap warehouses and with the lighting... 500 megawatts of lighting going through a power strip that you get at the Walmart, and smoke machines that were usually something that was set on fire. So the indie crowd is not one to really care much about like their health or anything like that. Do you think that there'll still be like indie shows that will still be done, backyard or semi legit because people just have this inherent, desire to go see a live performance? Or do you think this whole thing scares people enough that they'll say, we're not interested? And that could really hurt a lot of the indies right now, which don't make a lot of money to begin with.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer it. We're in weird times, really. You can't really have a virtual wrestling match. Wrestling's evolved so much that people now know that it's a bit more of a performance than it is actual competition. Real competition. So I saw the other day, and I don't remember who it was, but I don't like the Joey Ryan spots, flip spots and stuff like that. Don't like mind control and fast forward stuff that really shows that both guys are in on a joke, kind of situation. It's never been my thing. But they did a social distancing match where they were 6 feet away from each other. So they'd lock up and there'd be space between them. And they would go like this and make the guy body slam, it was really bad. And I hope that's not the direction that it goes in. That's not my thing. I love comedy. And as a manager, I did as many funny spots as I could, but they were still within the realm of possibility. I don't like spots that look like the other guy is in the joke. So
Kenny said earlier in the show, 2 francs and a handshake or whatnot. We've all done indie managing and indie everything. Yeah. Now, personally, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not going to risk my life for 2 francs and a handshake. As much as I enjoy it, as much as I enjoy, getting on the mic and antagonizing the fans or whatnot, it's not worth dying over. So I think a lot of the wrestlers are going to make that decision. I have a wife, I have kids, I have 2 dogs, whatever the case may be, and they need me. So, it's not going to be the same. I think there's some people that are absolute, fanatics, and it's addictive, and they would risk their life to wrestle in front of 37 people. Personally, I wouldn't. But what do you guys think?
I don't know. I'm going to be very interested to see when indies are able to come back from all this. I think there's still that inherent desire to get back in the ring and to have people watch what you do, and that the fame, as we talked about before, is kind of that ugly mistress that comes up and possesses people to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do, but they feel compelled to do it,
Yeah, but buddy, what you were saying is, some guy will have a farm and he'll put a ring out in the back and there'll be 23 people and 72 wrestlers. Is it worth dying over for this?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, well,
I would suggest... Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, I almost would suggest until they can get it back to how it was, to maybe take a hiatus, the same as any other TV show is doing right now. Like I was a big fan of The Walking Dead. I like the zombies, right? It got to the very end, and they had one more episode, but they didn't have a chance to get all the special effects done, and they closed the studio. So the finale of this season isn't ready yet. So they said, hey, it'll come later on in the year. I almost think that if they want to do wrestling right, put the egos aside a little bit, take a break, make it a season out of it, and come back next season when they can do everything what people are used to, so they don't put so much watered down weird content out there that we kill the audience and nobody wants to jump back in later on.
I think it's a great opportunity for the wrestlers and the promoters to put together promotional videos, get their merchandise in order, get their marketing together, and use this time constructively. Wrestlers sitting on Facebook talking about Raw and SmackDown's another waste of time. Let them promote themselves,
Well, yeah, and I think doing the kind of thing that you're doing with the COVID Con is a really great idea. I hope it's something that, it builds itself over time and gives these lesser names, but were once big names, a chance to get, publicity and get people to pay attention to what they have to promote and even be able to have contact with their fans.
Kenny has some huge names on COVID Con. DDP, Sid Vicious. Tell them some of the big names you have, Kenny.
Yeah. So DDP, Sid Vicious, Hurricane Helms. Let's see. We've got now Dutch Mantel. Like I said, he just said he's jumping in there. Al Snow's not announced yet. Will be. We've got Coco Beware. We have, I don't have the card in front of me, and there's just so many of them. We've got Fred Ottman, Typhoon, Just Incredible, Sabu, Joel Gertner, ODB. There's a huge list. There's more. I'm sorry if I'm forgetting people right now, but
that's still a lot. And again, tell everyone how they can find out more about it and more about your books.
Sure. For my books, check out WOHW.com. My publishing label is it stands for Walking on Hot Waffles, which really doesn't mean anything, but it just does. If you want to join up for that page so you can get all the updates on it and also see the live broadcast on May 2nd and May 3rd, go to Wrestling Bookmarks COVIDCon, or you could search the hashtag COVIDCon and it'll bring you right there, and you can join the Wrestling Bookmarks official Facebook group. That's where we'll broadcast.
And let me just add something as we start to wrap up. I hear so many fans, so-called fans, who will have $800 for a WrestleMania ticket, $6,500 for a Fiend belt, $5,000 for a WrestleMania ticket. All these GoFundMes are scams, and these guys blew all their money. Absolute bullshit. And thank you to guys like Kenny Casanova for helping a Kamala when shamefully the promoters did not take care of some of these guys. People have no idea what goes into a book. Hundreds, if not thousands of hours. Am I correct, Kenny?
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. People have no idea. So for you to do this, and just to help somebody and do a good job on top of it, it's not just slapping something together. This is a real commitment of time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears. So please support Kamala Speaks, support Vader Time, support all of Kenny's books. Kenny, anything you want to add? How do people actually watch the COVID Con? Where do they go?
So all they got to do is go to the wrestling group. It's facebook.com/ I believe it's Wrestling Bookmarks. And come May 2nd, if you put that on, a screen will be right there. You click on it and you can hear everything.
And when does it start? What time does it start?
9 in the morning, I believe. Okay. So it goes from 9 in the morning to midnight on Saturday, and then on Sunday it's 9 in the morning again till so far about 9:30, unless we get some more people, which we may tack on the end of the day.
And if you can post that on our Facebook site as well, so that anyone that's listening would be able to get in touch with you that way, that'd be great. This has been a really great interview. really appreciate, you know, your time and all the information that you've given us. And we'd really love to have you back again as a guest sometime soon.
That'd be great.
So,
I appreciate it. I like it.
all right. So thank you to everyone, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much,
Thanks.
guys.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
having me. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.